Hi, I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're talking about something I think is really not spoken of enough, and if you think about it, you're going to be like, oh, that makes total sense. But it really is this idea that people will often say in the old kind of psychoanalytic, theories that you often marry the opposite gendered partner, the opposite sex partner that raised you. But what I think really happens is we often choose a partner more similar to our primary attachment figure. So in other words, yes, you can marry your mother in many different ways, if you are female or not, or however you identify, but still most often women, at least at this point, are the primary caretakers. But it can be whoever it is or was that primary initial attachment figure. Because attachment theory says that we are trying to heal those initial attachment wounds. So it makes sense, right? If women are the primary caretakers, and that is where the most disruption occurred, it makes sense that we might choose partners who actually have qualities that are more similar to our mommies than our daddy issues, right? Now we can have, unfortunately, both. The truth is that I think that they both layer in different ways. Whether it's, in a classic heterosexual relationship, the mother had her issues and that's where you're trying to heal, but then the dad had his, and so they all layer and connect. I think it gets really, really complicated. But what I want you to get is, don't just assume that because you had maybe two not great parents, and let's say you're a man, that you're only trying to heal the mother relationship, or vice versa, or however you identify. So what the issue is here is that we're trying to heal this early attachment energy, I believe. And it might look different, but often we'll end up feeling the same way. And what do I mean by that? Here's an example. If you could close your eyes and think about, as long as you're in a safe place, close your eyes and think about the parent who raised you, who had the most early initial primary attachment with you, and or maybe the one who you had the most consistent wounding with. And ask yourself, if I really thought about, when I think about those relationships, the parts that hurt me, what are those feelings? Are they, for example, feeling lonely, or misunderstood, or abandoned, or not safely held? Okay, so start with whoever that primary person was. Then close your eyes, again, if you're in a safe place, not driving of course, and ask yourself, in my last most meaningful, hurtful, or pattern relationships, what did I end up feeling at the end of those relationships? And I would bet you that more often than not, you ended up feeling, for example, what I just said, lonely, misunderstood, abandoned, betrayed, whatever. So write out what you feel most hurt about in your childhood with your primary attachment figure, and then write out the feelings you felt in your most hurtful adult relationships, and see if they're similar. Now I do want to use, as I've been talking about this book a lot off and on in the last month or so, some examples of what this looks like. And so that is from this book by Margalis Feldstad. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but this is the book. And here's an example of what she says. So what we're talking about is how we often replay our childhood relationships. And so she says, some examples. If you didn't feel understood by your parent, you may pick a partner who also fails to understand you. If you were too frequently criticized by a parent or even a sibling, you might pick a partner who also criticizes you. If you felt rejected by your parent, get where I'm going with this? You might feel rejected by your partner. If you didn't get adequate emotional reassurance from your partner, you may pick an unsupportive partner. And the last example is, if you were held responsible for a dysfunctional sibling's behavior, now I haven't talked about siblings as attachments, but I will, you may feel easily responsible for your current partner's behavior. And the issue with siblings really quickly is that in some situations, the siblings get put in very closely impacted roles where they function also as a predominant attachment dynamic or as an influencing dynamic in your life. There can be sibling wounding, toxic siblings, and that can be profound. So don't underestimate that. So the problem is that it often looks so different when you first start with someone. You don't think that they're similar to these parents. And so that is kind of all of the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic and how I make so many videos around these issues, because I really truly want you to get help if you need therapy and you see yourself in these conversations. If you have not yet chosen a partner and or not had children, to try to focus on healing and becoming more aware, because nothing is more impactful than who you have a family with. And lastly, if you're already in these relationships and you already made those choices, but you're still suffering and you don't know why, to validate your experience. But what you have to understand is that these unhealed experiences often become the template for what you believe, that's the attachment map for what love and relationships and your needs or not, all of that. Are you entitled to anger and a sense of self and boundaries? All of that, I truly believe, unless we're aware of it, is often playing out in our adult relationships. And so it's really important, I believe, for you to understand that it's not just about healing whoever the most toxic parent was, because it may have been the most toxic parent was actually not the parent who raised you. For example, you could have had a pretty great, not perfect, but single parent raising you, but a really toxic other parent who wasn't around. And I am not suggesting for 1 minute that that doesn't also hurt you. All I'm saying is that they layer in together, so that if you had a really toxic, wounding primary parent, and if you have a toxic secondary parent, now you've got all of that going on. And that was frankly my experience. And so I understand that. Though my, one parent wasn't around much, there was a profound impact from that parent. And it did also apply to, let's say, dating men or whatever. I'm not suggesting it doesn't. But what I want you to understand is that it doesn't really matter who they were, what the story was, that the wounds can exist in different ways, but most significantly in the primary attachment figure. And that is where I have seen the most, to be honest, some of the worst wounds I have seen in people. This is not true for everyone, but I would say that I think when a person has a very wounding primary parent who raised them, who was the one around most, and that's the most toxic person, they often have a lot of wounds and struggles. Now, it might be that they actually, become very sensitive and very caring and nothing like that parent. But as I've been talking about this last couple of weeks, that would be me, for example. The problem is the caretaking becomes my problem, because now I'm trying to rotate around everyone else like that parent. And as a caretaker is where I suffer. And as a caretaker trying to choose a partner to heal, who often repeats the patterns, that's where we can suffer. So it really goes all over the board. But I just wanted to make sure that you know that it doesn't have to be the opposite of whatever you had, regardless of, how you were raised. That it really is the primary person that often can have a lot of wounds in any regard. In fact, both parents, one parent, even just if you never had the other parent, you never even knew them, that can be hurtful too. That can feel abandoning, like betrayal. And so, it's not quite so simple as whoever was the most toxic parent. It really is that we are shaped by these stories, but we don't have to live in them and be defined by them. And I truly believe that knowledge is power. It doesn't mean you can know all these things and just have a perfect life and not pick wounding partners. But I really believe if I had known more, if I had understood what was in this course before or this set of information, right, in any regard, books, whatever, I truly believe it would have shaped who I chose and certainly how long I stayed in the choices I made. But I had no idea. And I think that's the case for many of us. Although I think it's changing, I think many of us have no idea. And that's really why I'm here. So thank you so much for being here. I think I rambled a bit today, but I'm just so grateful you're here. I'm so passionate about this topic. I so much want you to know that it's not your fault, that there are ways to change and heal, and that you can choose different pathways. And so I hope you also know that my goal is to validate your experience in whatever experience it is. So thanks for being here. Please stay safe and well, and I'll see you tomorrow.